them unfold like the truth retold. And I rap in a flame in the world so cold. Every scar in my chest recites the law. Every breath in the mic is a rebel's draw. I don't flex for the crowd, I reflex the law. Let me look in the mirror, this is sharp like a prophet's job. Because I'm speaking this truth, but what the wisdom is, it's just the thing that I do. I move through the static, no map, no guide. Just a compass in my blood, let the roots I ride. Let the beat break rules, let the schemes collide. I'm the glitch that was born from the force once high. No filter, no cut, just a voice unchained. From a mind that stay wild, where the wild ones get trained. I don't beg for place in the Hall of Fame. I just call my own name in the sound of rain. Drip, 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 nigga. Let me get back, cause I'm it, nigga. Let me tell you how I've been a misfit, nigga. And now I kill the game, cause I'm that sick, nigga. Holla. So when they ask who I am, don't beat my name. So I'm the thunder in the wilds, now I'm built for fame. See, I was built for the room, not the shallow flame. And I write what survives when they kill the game. And been killing the game for years. Now I'm switching these gears and tell you why I'm here. Holla. Bitches, what's my story? That what's my story? Once upon a time, niggas stood on this ground. They said it was a 9 to 5 to sit here alive. Remember, I told you it was just like us, do or die. But I'm not gonna repeat myself. I'm gonna repeat the wealth and stack it up every day until you see myself in the mirror. Ain't a clever, no competing with self unless it's in the comments. There's no comparing them. What I'm fearing, I'm nothing. I'm going for greatness on this road. What I got a story that I never told. So let me smoke this air with a story to tell. Holla. I don't aim for the charts, I aim past the sky. Where the verse turns to vape and the truth again lie. Where the rhythm ain't music and the frequency cry. Where they waking souls and they didn't know to die. I've been silent too long and the world so loud. Where they clap for the best and the wise ain't proud. Where the lies move fast and the truth ain't allowed. As I ride through the dust where the root speaks proud. They've been feed on illusion, I pass the light. Built on a temp from loss, we return with sight. I don't rap for the mama or the club at night. I speak codes from the dark where the birth new might. Where they sleep in the metrics, I wake up in the streams. Where the numbers mean nothing, the soul now redeems. Where they one vibe, while I one vital, clean and seam. So I call my lane and lose the dream. I know you don't see what I see. I decode through the breath. Every pulse a verse and transcend through death. They recite for checks, I recite what's left. And through the truth that's hidden in the world beneath. I don't come with a crew or a chain or clap. Just a signal in the spine what it can never route. They looping the same, I reroute the drought. And plant seeds in the beat till the fields break out. Let them all get their pain for the flesh and the trend. I preserve every scar and reverse side I send. Let them rap for the rise and the clicks they spend. I just channel with the future and they can't comprehend why.
What's crazy is I think my mic works. I'm not really sure. It should. It should be working. I think it's working. I don't know. It sounds like it is. Yeah. So, then we got 51 people in here right now. Like I said, I've been having technical difficulties. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I just looked at my email. My shit got hacked. That's great. Someone's been trying to hack in my email all day. I didn't even see that shit. So that's fun. You know, that's always a fun time to see your emails getting hacked, you know? So, I don't know if I should do the stream or I should go deal with that. I don't fucking know. All I know is I wanted to watch a documentary. So I wanted to come back real quick and just say, hey, this is what the fuck's happening because I got some weird shit going on. So, yeah, that's why your boy's going on stream, going off stream, and going back on stream, and probably going to go back off because now I got to go deal with this problem, you know? Thank God it didn't get in, I don't think. But it looks like they attempted it so much that they temporarily locked my account. So, fun. Just fun, dandy, nice time. I love it, you know? So, yeah. Anyway, I would love to watch this documentary, and I think we should still watch the documentary and say fuck them, right? But, I don't know. You tell me in chat. Should I do that? Should I not do that? You tell me what we should be doing. Either way, It's fucked up. It's annoying. It's very annoying. Very annoying that we gotta deal with this shit every day. I feel like every time I even try to do anything, there's always a motherfucker trying to stop that shit. Why? I don't know. I don't know. At this point, it's just very annoying. It's just I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's just like corny at this point, you know. But it is what it is. It is what it is. You know, like they say, if you're don't have haters, then you're not successful. I guess, and I don't know why those two go hand in hand. I don't know who decided to make that shit up, but they did, and they doing it, and they continuously do it, and it is what it is. So I'm gonna try to go back to this fucking documentary or whatever it is, fucking podcast, you know, and we'll watch that shit and we'll see what's going on. But yeah, yo, this documentary seems pretty good so far. It was getting a little slow, no, slow start, but I think it is gonna get really good. So put that shit back on, transition my screen. Let's see what's good. curious what you guys think. Do you guys think it's local flood or a global flood? Now, my opinion, this is a hard one, you know, because I never thought about it ever being a local thing. And that's interesting because that means the rest of the world didn't even get affected by this so-called flood, right? But it's interesting that there's even ideology out there saying that it's local. But if I had to bet, I would think it's global. But hey, you never know. You know, Sodom and Gomorrah was a local thing, so could have been local. See that shit right there is what throws me off. Like you know, like it being 10,000 BC. I just don't know where we're getting that information from. You know, it's so long ago. So it's like even shit that's like 100 years ago, we barely have that information. Like we do obviously, but like there's a lot of it gone. When they talk about burning all the books, I mean that's one of the occasions of that, right? And that wasn't that long ago. It was one of the last world wars that we had. So it's interesting that we can go all the way back to 10,000 BC, but we can't even go 100 years in modern day. So that always questions me, you know. But teach his own. That's another thing that always fucking tickles me, tickles my fancy. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we know that? And two, where the fuck are they? Like, I understand extinction, blah blah blah, evolution, blah blah blah. But like, how do you go from these big ass animals to these small animals? Like, and why did we even transition to that? Like, even if extinction was a thing, humans are said to be around that time too. So why do humans survive and not these bigger animals that technically could eat all of us, you know, or destroy the human race and survive themselves? So It's interesting that we survived, they did, and we have now all the records on them, or supposedly we came after them, and then we just started finding their bones, put them together, and started finding what they were. And so accurate that we can draw them out, name them, understand what they were, what they did, etc., which is kind of crazy to me. But hey, I mean, maybe there's an alien race out there that's telling us all the information. Maybe they're not telling us everything as the human race. Maybe there's other humans out there gatekeeping, which most of us believe when you go down conspiracy roads. But it always, that right there always throws me off a little bit. So between the time and the animals in that time, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. That's what I'm saying. See. But see, like that's another thing. How come we never had any of those events ever again? Like, why did it just come one time or a few times, whatever amount of times you said it did, but then it just never happened again? Like that's it's unheard of. It's like it's almost saying like we had one lightning storm and that was it. When we know we all get them all the time, hurricanes, tornadoes, all these natural disasters happen all the time. Now, some less than others. Tsunamis obviously don't happen all the time, but we had enough of them to record them, understand the devastation, and understand what can happen when they do happen, right? So why do we have records of these other natural disasters that are like phenomenons? That's again throws me off. It really does. You should be able to hear it now. Let me know if you guys.
And that, the position of the stars seems to change from our perspective over time. The great year is nearly 26,000 years. Takes to complete one full wobble of the Earth. I think it's 25,920 years to complete one of these, because the Earth is, it's tilted on axis and it wobbles like a top, like a spinning top. But it wobbles at a very, very slow rate. And it takes a long time to complete that circuit. And that's known as a great year. And that is fundamentally what the zodiac is tracking, because the zodiac is divided into 12 houses. Each house has a particular sign associated with it. And each sign represents an age, an astrological age, or an astronomical age. And each age is 2,160 years. And there's 12 of them. And so when we talk about, the different ages, and let's go back to the biblical narrative here. When in the Bible you read that Jesus talks about the end of the age, and his disciples talk about the end of the age. Well, there's two things going on there. There's the astronomical age, that is the age of Christ, which is Pisces. Pisces is a fish, right? The sign of Pisces is a fish, and the sign of Christ in the early church was a fish, and of the Christian community. And we're still in the age of Pisces, and we're transitioning into the age of Aquarius, and these ages are calculated on the vernal equinox. So like on March 21st, if you look due east on March 21st, just before the sun rises, you're going to see a particular zodiacal constellation sitting on the horizon, and the sun.
But see, that's where shit gets weird, right? Because now, when you have the Gregorian calendar, obviously you already fucked up time. You fucked up the days, you fucked up the months, you fucked up everything. If you don't believe that, just think of the number. Oct is 8, and think of the month October. Where is it? It's the 10th month, right? Don't make sense. So why we name something Oct that only has 8, like octopus, 8 arms, right? So why would that now be 10? So obviously we fucked shit up. So the zodiac, yes, that doesn't necessarily change because we don't really have the power to do so. It's in the sky, it's out of our control, so we can't really do anything about that. But how do we now match the two times together? Because if we're going with the Gregorian calendar and you have astrological things saying this, well, we could be totally off on the whole cycle itself, right? So that's where it gets a little shaky. And I think a lot of people don't even know that part of the Gregorian stuff. So we're missing a lot of years, so many years at this point that days and minutes are going by that we're technically off on the original time that we started counting, or at least from the way that we're doing things when we're doing it based on lunar. So kind of hard to go back and forth with that, but if we were still on lunar, then this would make a lot more sense. The fact that we changed to a more solar, now it's kind of weird because we're not going off of the real astrological clock. So that's just my opinion, but it is what it is.
Sun is rising up into this constellation. And if it's the vernal equinox, you can know what age you're in, what astrological age you're in, because whatever that constellation is on the horizon on the vernal equinox that the sun is rising into, that tells you the age.
So what happens at the new age?
So
The age of
there's
Aquarius.
that's an age. So those are astrological ages, each one of the houses of the zodiac, and then you have groupings of them. So you have the fixed points of the zodiac, which are which are Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus. And in between these fixed cardinal points, right, you have three houses of the zodiac, 3 ages. And the ancients knew that the cataclysm was cyclic. And when you
I gotta fix my chat. My chat's it's too far behind everything. So let me just bring it up. There you go. Alright, we're good.
you transition in the grouping of these 3 astrological ages is called an aeon. This is what the Greeks referred to as an aeon. And when you transition from one aeon to the next, and an aeon has a duration of 6,480 years, when you transition from one aeon to the next, it's cataclysmic. That transition is cataclysmic, and they knew it because it's cyclic. And
What do you mean? What is cyclic?
it means it happens like clockwork.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the zodiac is. It's a clock. So they're tracking the. I mean, if you knew that cataclysm was cyclic, you would be tracking when it's coming, right? I mean, that. What else would be more important?
Yeah.
That would be the.
So this is fucked up. This is real fucked up. So let's say, hypothetically, we're not in year 2025. Let's say we're heading towards another cycle. How the fuck do we know? We would not know. It would just happen randomly. Like randomly, we would just get hit by some shit, and that'll be it. Be the end of the world that fast. Because no one tracked it, no one knew what to do, and now we got all those people on the ground knowing that it's coming, but we're just above ground about to get hit by something we have no idea. It's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Most important thing to keep track of is where are we on this cataclysmic time clock? Because these cataclysms are civilization-ending events, and every primary ancient civilization on Earth has a record of cataclysm. They all I call it the tombstone in the timeline of history. They all recognize, acknowledge, and record this event that happened, this cataclysmic event that brought to ruin the old world, the antediluvian world, which they considered to be superior, that the civilizations that existed in the antediluvian world, in the minds of the ancients, were superior to their own civilizations, this includes the ancient Egyptians. They believed that the civilization that existed in the world previous to the cataclysm, to the last cataclysm, was far superior to their own.
Do you believe that?
I do. This is a time that, the ancient Egyptians refer to as Zep Tepi, the first time. And it's known by the Greeks as the Golden Age. This is that period of time when the gods descended to the earth. They cohabitated with human beings. They copulated with human women, and they progenerated a race of hybrid giants, demigods in the earth. That general narrative is ubiquitous. It's universal on planet Earth. Every major primary ancient civilization has a myth, a legend that records that event. Now, the Egyptians, if you'll recall that in Plato's Critias and dialogue, in his Critias and Timaeus dialogue, that he has Solon of Athens visiting the priests of Sais in Egypt. And this is where we get the Atlantean story from. This is where the narrative of Atlantis comes from. And the Egyptian priests are informing Solon that they tell him basically that the Greeks think that they have ancient knowledge, but their knowledge really isn't hoary with age, as they put it. That the Egyptians are tracking information going much deeper into the past. And they inform him that there was a cataclysm that brought ruin to the world, and that the Greeks knew about that cataclysm, but that there were other cataclysms previous to that cataclysm. So the Egyptians were tracking a cyclic cataclysmic event. And in fact, in Dendera, in the Temple of Hathor, there used to be now it's in a museum in France, there used to be a depiction, the earliest one we have, of the zodiac on the ceiling of the temple. And it's exactly the same signs of the zodiac that we have today. The ancient Egyptians were calculating cyclic cataclysm. And they knew that at the transition from one aeon to the next, that transition was cataclysmic. And we are transitioning from one aeon into another. We are in the age of Pisces transitioning into Aquarius. This is the end of one aeon and the beginning of another. And the ancients knew that when you're in this period of time.
Is aeons and eons the same thing? Is it spelled the same way? Is it the same meaning? I'm curious about that one.
This cataclysmic transition, there's a sign that indicates that you're there. It's called the sign of the Suntelia. And a Suntelia is a 1,000-year period of transition between one aeon and the next. And when you're in this 1,000-year period, cataclysm could befall in this window of time. And there's something called the sign of the Suntelia. And the sign of the Suntelia is if you're in this window of time and you're living somewhere in the ancient Near East, and generally speaking in the Mediterranean area, and you, on an equinox or a solstice, you will see the Milky Way, which the ancients considered to be the Milky Sea, right? The cosmic sea will be encircling the Earth. So you look to the horizon, your 360 view, you'll see the Milky Way, the cosmic sea, sitting on the horizon, encircling the Earth. That's called the sign of the Suntelia. And if that's happening in your time, then you know you are within that 1,000-year transitional period from one aeon to the next, during which time cataclysm is coming. And again, the ancients knew that. So that was a long-winded explanation of why I believe that the ancients knew that cataclysm was coming, and were preparing for it. So going back to the underground dwellings, what are we doing today?
So was that this aeon or a previous one?
Which one?
The Turkey.
I don't know.
Caves in Turkey.
I'm familiar with what you're referring to. I've seen documentaries, but I don't remember what the dating is on that. But I do know that today, many of the billionaires and the elites on planet Earth are building underground bunkers.
Yeah.
Deep underground bunkers. Do they know something's coming? Are they preparing for something that's some sort of impending cataclysm? I got a gut feeling they are. I mean, we are transitioning from
Now, how do you think
Pisces
they have
to
that
Aquarius. I think that this knowledge has been preserved, and it's been preserved primarily in the mystery schools.
The mystery schools.
Right, which is basically the occult. It's been passed on through the mystery schools, and they have kept this knowledge. But that's the ancients understood. That's why they're obsessed with the stars. By the way, It wasn't just because, obviously you need to know what the seasons are if you're going to know when to sow and when to harvest and make the necessary preparations for the changing of the seasons and so forth. That's very important to ancient people. So that's one of the reasons why they were so obsessed with the stars, because they're tracking all of that. But the deeper level is because they understood that the zodiac was a timepiece, and that it was calculating cyclic cataclysm. And this, by the way, a lot of this information comes from one of the most consequential books I've ever read. No, the most consequential book I've ever read in my life. It's called Cydonia, The Secret Chronicles of Mars, by the late David Flynn.
Mars, there's a topic.
There's a topic.
Yeah, there's a topic. What do you, I don't know what to make of that.
I don't think that our
You
desire...
saw the pyramid thing?
Yes.
Is that real?
So I believe
I can't even tell what the hell's
I
real.
believe that the famous face on Mars, that was a big deal back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That area on Mars is called Cydonia. And I do believe that what we see in some of those photographs is the remains of an ancient civilization that inhabited Mars. And I absolutely believe that, let's say, there are factions on Earth, there are individuals who know that to be a fact. And I don't think that our drive, which is being manifest primarily through Elon Musk, to go to Mars, to put a man on Mars, is coincidental. I think we're going to go to Mars and we're going to make a discovery of magnitudinous import on Mars, specifically in the Cydonia region. Namely, that there was an ancient advanced civilization inhabiting Mars.
Do you think there was a civilization on Earth when there was a civilization on Mars?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I do. I do.
You do?
Think, yes, I do.
Do you think we were communicating?
I'm not sure human beings were around at that time. You know, from a biblical perspective, I would categorize that as a pre-Adamic. I would put that in a pre-Adamic context, and I would say that there was an angelic civilization inhabiting Mars and the Earth, and perhaps the other planets in our solar system. But that would be in a pre-Adamic context, before the creation of Adam, and that something cataclysmic happened that absolutely annihilated those civilizations, that angelic civilization, let's call it. And I think that the event that led to the destruction of the civilization on Mars was the implosion of a planet that was once in our solar system, and now is the residue, the debris field.
Why do you think it was
Between
an
Mars and Jupiter.
explosion from another planet?
Well, there's a debris field between Mars and Jupiter. And that debris field, to me, I've done a lot of research into this. I think I think that debris, there's a ring of debris. I think that is the residue of a planet. And I think that, you know, you can, and I do this in my book, Birthright, you can trace in the biblical narrative, in the oracles of the Old Testament, you can trace this narrative in which I believe there's references to this planet that was destroyed. And it was destroyed in a great conflict that unfolded in the solar system previous to the creation of mankind. And I believe that the planet and I know this, if there's Christians listening to this podcast, they're going to be thinking, what in the world is he talking about? But there are references to Rahab. And I think that this is a planet that was crushed like a vessel of clay, broken like a vessel of clay, that God crushed Rahab and he smote the dragon. And there's these very interesting veiled references in the Old Testament, quite a few of them, that, again, I believe are intimations of this cosmic conflict that erupted in the cosmos in a pre-Adamic context previous to the creation of mankind on planet Earth.
You've heard me talk about Patriot Mobile for a while.
That's pretty crazy. That's a good point. I never thought of it like that. Like, where did all the debris come from? Like, we all talk about space debris and all this other stuff, but like, obviously it had to be something from somewhere else, right? It can't just be us. It's not like we're just throwing out trash up in space. So where is that coming from? And that's a good point, that it could be a forgotten planet, or a planet that unfortunately had a demise at some point, and now it's just a debris of that planet floating around the solar system still between different planets. And of course, since we're further away from that planet per se, we don't see the debris as much, but you know, every now and then we have things falling to the sky, whether it's a asteroid or whatever, you know. So maybe that's what this is the whole time. It's just bits of that planet falling on ours, and we're thinking, oh, it's just space rocks. And it's not just space rocks. It was actually a planet that was a big rock that maybe blew up. Could have been nuclear. Could have been, like you said, God destroying the planet. I don't think God does that a lot, though, right? We haven't seen that in our lifetime, at least, right? And we haven't seen it in past lifetimes that we have recorded. So I don't think that's a normal thing that God does. God seems like a very free will type of thing. So I don't see why, even within free will, you destroy a planet. So I think the only thing that could have happened is the free will, people that had free will at the time destroyed their own planet, which is what we fear every day. And we have nuclear and all of these atomic bombs, and even worse, hydrogen bombs and everything else that we have now at this point that can pretty much take this whole planet away and vaporize it. So could be that. But yeah, let's talk about Patriot Mobile.
while now. They've stood in the gap for Americans who believe that faith, family, and freedom are worth fighting for, and they're the real deal. They've got cutting-edge technology, and switching is easy. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% US-based team can activate you in minutes right over the phone. They're one of the few carriers with access to all 3 major US networks. That means exceptional nationwide coverage. They can even put a second number on a different network on the phone. It's like carrying 2 phones in one. They have unlimited data.
So, before we allow Patriot Mobile's ad to keep going on Sean Ryan's show, we do have our own called Self OS. And Self OS is the same as I think. I wouldn't say it's the same as Patriot Mobile because we have differences. One of the biggest differences is that you're helping AI get powered and you're getting rewarded for doing so. But all of the encryption, all of the privacy, all the good stuff that he's talking about for Patriot is available at Self OS as well. So you can go to useselfos.com and you can go download the app or purchase a cell phone, whatever tickles your fancy, and you can now join the network just like Patriot. Or you can join Patriot and tell me how much money you made with them. It's up to you.
Data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, internet on the go devices, and home internet backup. Make the switch today and experience the difference. Go to patriotmobile.com/SRS or call 972-PATRIOT and right now use the promo code SRS for a free month of service when you sign up. Switch to Patriot Mobile and defend freedom with every call and text you make. That's patriotmobile.com/SRS or call 972-PATRIOT. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Men today face immense pressure to perform, to provide, and to keep.
Well, every time he brings up an ad, I'm gonna do an ad. So, hey, BetterHelp. Sounds good. Get a therapist. I understand, but nothing is better than meditation, in my opinion. This is solely my opinion. But if you're into meditation, I will go to tryinnervoice.com. That's TRYinnervoice.com. That is a app that I built, I think, in January. It's been a while since I haven't been on it, on the website at least, but I go on it every day. But I'm curious when I built it. I think it was January. So yeah, around January, I built this app. The idea was we always listen to other people meditate. While we're meditating, listen to other people's voices and we get guided by them. The idea was, what if we can listen to our own selves while we meditate? So I built the app. Gonna release it in the App Store because I think that's important. But for now, you can go on the website, you can go log in, use it right on your phone, and train your own voice, train your own inner voice there, and you can listen to yourself meditate. Right now, we're only allowing 5-minute meditations, but I'll do an upgrade to allow more duration. But there are different frequencies, so if you're into that, you can choose by different hertz. Each hertz obviously has a different effect. So the effects are there as well. So, a calm setting could be a 963 hertz, for example. And yeah, you can literally meditate with your own voice and have your own quiet time and really understand what's deep inside your brain. As much as someone can sit there and talk to you, which I think is important, because talking out what's going on with your life is very important. But what also is important is being comfortable with yourself, being comfortable with that inner voice, that moral code that you have within you. And I think everyone should have a chance and should also do that every day as much as they can, because that can dramatically change your life. So, back to BetterHelp.
Keep it all together. So it's no wonder that 6 million men in the U.S. suffer from depression every year, and it's often undiagnosed. The truth is, it's okay to struggle. Real strength comes from opening up about what you're carrying so you can be at your best for yourself and everyone in your life. If you're a man and you're feeling the weight of the world, talk/SRS. So if you think that basically, you think the Earth is a big cycle. So we go through these events, the civilization's wiped out, and then we start all over.
We start all over like children, as the priest of Sais told Solon of Athens. We have to begin again as children. And by the way,
and some of the stuff that we're finding here on Earth is remnants of
potentially
previous.
Potentially. So I think, and to to sum this up, I think that that this planet Rahab, again, that once existed between Mars and Jupiter, imploded or exploded, and the argument, the scientific argument against this is that there's not enough residue there. There's not enough debris to account for a planet. But there's been some papers published
Could be
recently.
a moon.
Well, okay,
That's the point.
that's possible.
That's the point. Like, what's the calculation of debris that we're even going off of, right? Like, how many planets did technically explode that we're like, oh, when that one exploded, there was X amount of debris, right? Let's just start with that. Two, I mean, if asteroids have any correlation to this, there's been so many of those motherfuckers hitting this planet over time that I think they could have just came here. That's why we probably should be counting that and the stuff that's in space still, because how do we know they're not hitting other planets, number one? How do we know we are just not too late to the party and started counting a little too late, right? So these are things that I think people need to question more. You know, as we hear these facts and or opinions on certain topics, we need to question it. We need to really, really dive deep into these books. We need to stop reading the books and taking the word for the word, and that's it. Like, we need to say, okay, I see what this person wrote, but can you tell me more? That simple question can go miles of knowledge and understanding for the next person. So we need to start doing that for not only our society, but future societies, so we're no longer confused. Because I'm tired of being confused. I don't know if it's you, I don't know if it's me. I'm just over it. So, hey, if you're just like me and you're tired of being confused, let's start asking some questions, man. This is why I'm even playing this podcast in the first place, because I really just want to, get our minds turning a little bit. I'm tired of the same old shit, the same old distraction things that we see every day and blah, blah, blah. Like, it is what it is. But I think nowadays we can start asking more questions. We have a lot of information in a lot of places that we can get, so we need to start doing that. We need to start diving deep. So that's my point.
Well, there's been some papers published recently that make the argument, and I can't reference those papers exactly right now, I don't recall the titles of them, that do make the argument that there is enough debris there because a lot of it would have been instantly vaporized. Most of the mass, according to this paper I read, most of the mass of a planet, if a planet explodes, that's an unimaginable force. That's an unimaginable explosion, the explosion of a planet. The heat that would be generated, the energy would vaporize most of the matter. And then it could throw off far into outer space, huge chunks that go way out there. Maybe some of those got caught in the orbit of the sun and are slingshotting around the sun. And maybe and this is just a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And maybe when these fragments of this planet come back into our solar system, in the neighborhood of the planets in our solar system, it wreaks havoc on Earth. And if, let's say, there's a chunk of this planet Rahab that's basically like a gigantic asteroid now, and it's slingshotting around the sun every 6,480 years, right? Maybe this is what's being tracked by the Zodiac, and maybe it has a debris field behind it, right? Like asteroids have big debris fields behind them, and the Earth potentially passes through that debris field. We intersect with this body moving through our solar system. We pass through the debris field, and we get bombarded with the debris, which, the Younger Dryas impact, for example, could have resulted from this. That's just a hypothesis. I'm just throwing it out there.
You had mentioned earlier, you think, all these billionaires are building these underground bunkers and they have this access. I know it's a fact.
Yep.
But that they have access to all this ancient knowledge through what, the occult?
Through the mystery schools.
I mean, at what point do you just get introduced like, oh, hey, you made it. Here's the
You mean
here's
into the mystery
knowledge.
schools?
You might want to build a bunker.
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. But
What is the occult? I'm new to all of this.
Okay, so, the occult is a very general term. The occult can encompass, your everyday Satanist.
That's kind of what I thought it was.
Yeah, the occult is a very broad term. The mystery schools are a little more specific. The mystery schools go back to the ancient times, and the function of the mystery school, fundamentally, is to preserve the knowledge of the antediluvian world. and more specifically, to preserve the knowledge that was transmitted to mankind by the gods who descended in the Golden Age. That is the purpose of the mystery schools. And there's various mystery schools around the world, but
like what? What are they?
well, you had the Elysian mysteries that were the ancient Greek mysteries. You had the Egyptian mysteries. You have the modern adaptations, like you had the Knights Templar, who were to some extent a mystery school. But then you had the Masons, the Freemasonry.
Didn't the Templar turn into the Masons?
The Masons preserve some of the traditions of the Templar order. Yes, there's modifications, but fundamentally there's the let's say the pillars of Masonry do come to some extent from the Knights Templar. And so you have different variations of mystery schools. This is the Illuminati, right? Mm-hmm. That would be a one faction of the mystery schools, or maybe a term that encompasses them all. And again, the primary purpose of the mystery schools is to preserve the knowledge that was transmitted by the gods to mankind in the antediluvian world before the cataclysm. The knowledge that was transmitted to mankind during the Golden Age, during Zep Tepi the first time. And that is functional knowledge, by the way. It's not just, it's not just sort of arcane, mysterious knowledge that pertains to, just bizarre stuff. No, we're talking about functional knowledge, information that is very important, that is transmitted through myths also. Myths transmit knowledge. The wise concocted those myths. The ancient sages they devised the myths. And we're talking about the famous myths from the ancients among the Greeks and the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Mesopotamians. What we today look at as bedtime stories. What we today view as folklore, and of course, historians and archaeologists and anthropologists don't really give much weight to these myths. Oh, that's just Greek mythology. But the myths were intentionally designed to transmit information, to preserve information and transmit it through time. And it's done primarily through symbolism. Because languages change, right? Mm-hmm. Languages change. But
That's a good point. So I want to make that point too. So language, obviously, yes, has been changing every single civilization that we ever had. But another thing, if you go all the way back, and if you just think about, okay, like what is the original, let's say, what's the original language of the universe, right? It has to be tone and symbols. Those have to be the original ways of communication. As much as we make fun of, Africans making the clicking sounds with their mouths and shit like that, like that actually is pure intelligence rather than crafting words. Why? Because if you think about every animal, every part of nature, all has a specific tone, right? What the trees sound like, or if the leaves are blowing on the ground, you know exactly what that sounds like. You know exactly what a bird's chirp sounds like, a dog's bark, a cat's meow, etc. They're all tone, right? They're not language, right? The trees don't blow by and say hello, right? Like they make their sound. So sound is obviously one of the original languages that we tend to take too lightly. Right? Because each sound could actually have intent behind it. And that intent is just as strong as language, as I would say words. Right? So symbolism is also another one of those things, right? Putting symbols together, putting pictures or any of these type of things for symbolism is also another way for understanding something visually, right? So when you think about the senses, those would be the first two that will touch your hearing sensing and also your sight, right? And your vision. So it's interesting that we complicated things over time and created language, but the original sound had to be the original language. And that's just my opinion because it's still here, right? Birds have not evolved, let's say, and started talking to us and saying, hey, we just want to fly over here, or hey, there's this worm over here, can you let me go get it real quick? Like they're still chirping to each other and understanding each other. So the fact that they understand each other means obviously the intent behind the sound is still just as powerful as us speaking language. So it's my opinion.
meaning of the symbols always remains the same.
So how do you think these guys get into, how do they get the knowledge? Have you thought about that?
You mean the people who are in the...
Yeah, the bunker builders.
So it's, again...
I mean, they could just be worried about nuclear war.
There's a couple of things that's true.
about.
Yes, absolutely. That's certainly in play. But there's a couple of ways. I mean, one, if you're a member of the mystery schools, and I'm not saying your neighborhood Freemason, just your average Joe who happens to be a member of a lodge. No, you got to be way high up into these organizations before they start to transmit this information to you. Because at the lower levels of Masonry, they're not told. This comes from, by the way, Manly P. Hall, who is one of the greatest Masonic philosophers, probably the greatest Masonic philosopher. He said that the lower levels of the Masonic order, that they give them a different meaning to the symbols, and they don't tell them the true meaning behind the rituals and the symbols, and you don't get the true meaning until you get to the higher levels. And I think that's probably true across the board in the mystery schools. But so you can learn this in the mystery schools, or I think at this point, probably let's just assume for a moment, and I don't know if it's true, okay? It's just a hypothesis. Let's assume that there is a body out there in the solar system that's coming back in, that's on this path around the sun, that it gets slingshotted back out into outer space, comes back around every 6,480 years. Maybe we've detected it. Maybe NASA's detected it. Maybe some of our military satellites up there have detected this body that's coming into our solar system. And that, I think, would prompt, the building of underground bunkers. We have deep underground military bases. I'm sure you're aware of that all over the world, but especially under the continental United States. We're talking 1 mile to 2 miles below the surface of the Earth. And it was
1 mile to 2 miles
below the surface of the Earth. Yes.
I just watched this documentary last night about how Russia dug basically a hole. They got, I think, 7.1 miles deep.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't go anymore. Nobody else has done it. They said that the Earth, I can't remember if it was every mile or every kilometer, the Earth, it gets 60 degrees hotter.
Yeah, probably.
It'll be like 120 degrees.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what happened, and then the audience can draw their own conclusions. But during World War II, do you remember what one of the primary problems for Hitler was? One of the major reasons why the Nazis lost that war was because we were bombing the bejesus out of them.
Yeah.
I mean, the bombing of Dresden. We weren't just bombing, military and industrial targets. We bombed cities, right? We firebombed cities. And the purpose behind this campaign, this bombing campaign, was to decimate Hitler's industrial base, for one thing, so that he couldn't build weapons fast enough, and so we were hitting the airfields, we were hitting the industrial plants, and a lot of these industrial plants were located in the cities. So Hitler decided, and he did it too late, he decided that he was going to move his manufacturing to subterranean facilities. I mean, this is logical, right? Now, that's an enormous undertaking to do that. You can't just move manufacturing underground on a whim. That's an enormous project, but he began to do it. And there was an organization called the Todt Organization that was in charge of building these underground facilities. And by the end of World War II, there were underground facilities. Now, they weren't a mile under the ground, but they were pretty deep. And they were using, in some instances, slave labor to do it. And had Hitler done this earlier, we would have been in trouble, because we would not have been able to disrupt the production of the armaments. And after the war, of course, there was the Operation Paperclip, in which we brought over strategic Nazi scientists from different fields, from different scientific domains. We brought them over to the United States, including guys like Wernher von Braun, who became instrumental in our rocket program over here. He was working on the Vril rockets over in for the Nazis. And we brought over various scientists and various military personnel who we thought could be useful for our endeavors here, our scientific endeavors in the United States. And among these scientists were members of the Todt Organization. And we realized the utility of building underground facilities because we just bombed the hell out of the Germans. And we realized that warfare in the future is going to be aerial primarily. So we brought the members of the TOTE organization over here, and we began to build deep underground military bases. But I believe, based on documentation, that we developed a particular kind of mining apparatus that was a nuclear, it was nuclear powered mining machine that could bore out and liquefy rock as it moved through the rock. So it bores the rock out and it liquefies it. It creates like this vitrified tunnel, these vitrified chambers. And so we invented a technology that allowed us to go very deep and to build much faster than the Germans were able to do. And, you know, back in the 70s, the RAND Corporation published a paper describing what is called a magneto-leviton train, which
Magneto-leviton train.
maglev train, a magneto-leviton train that could be installed either on the surface or underground, and that would operate in a vacuum tube. And it didn't run on a rail, rather it was using the electromagnetic force. And it was basically floating. It was a monorail, and it was floating. I think like 3/4 of an inch off of the rail, because of the magnetic influence. And in the paper they described how they could build this train, and if they put it in a vacuum, there's no resistance, there's no friction. They said that they could go coast to coast. I think it was half an hour or 40 minutes, coast to coast, from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in like a half an hour with this magneto-leviton train. Well, I'm very persuaded that we did build that train system, but we built it underground and in secret. And in fact, I've talked to individuals in, let's say, highly placed individuals in the military who've confirmed that such a thing exists, and there is an underground railway, and it is this magneto-leviton system, and it connects the underground bases.
I got a question. You know, why would you have a podcast? You're out there. You got a great social media presence. You're here. Why would top military advisors or anybody leak that information to you?
Well, I mean, I think that it's common knowledge among people in the intelligence community and certain individuals working in different levels of the government. I don't think that it's that big of a secret that we have a train system like that. It would make sense for continuity of government, right? If we are preparing for a nuclear strike, that we would build underground bases and connect them with some kind of a rail system. So that part isn't, I don't think, that classified. I think what goes on in the underground bases that's the classified stuff. I think that's where some of these unacknowledged special access programs are being developed in the deep underground military bases. But I interface with individuals all the time. I've interfaced with congressmen, people in the intelligence community, people in the military and of course it's all anecdotal. I've never seen the train system. I've never been in an underground base. But I've read the papers on the nuclear boring machine. I've read the papers on the TOTE organization. I've read the papers from the RAND Corporation on the magneto-leviton train. And by the way, in that paper in the 1970s, they say in the paper that they now have the technology to build it. They had the technology in the 70s to build that train. So I think they did build it. They just didn't build it for the public. They took the technology underground. And now the Japanese and the Chinese are developing these kind of railways using the same kind of technology. Of course, they're not running as far as I know, they're not running in a vacuum tube. But they're using the same kind of technology in bullet trains and different kinds of rail systems that are being developed. So it's
That's interesting. So it sounds like a lot of our classified stuff that we build, specifically in America, let's say, is mostly on the ground, which would make sense. Like, why build your shit above ground where everybody can see it, where you can build it underground, and as long as everybody keeps their mouth shut, no one would ever know, So, interesting. I had a thought the other day, and I was like, what if the sewer was like a buffer, right? So like, yeah, it's obviously a sewer system. Yes, it has utility. Yes, it's functional. But what if under the sewer system, there's a whole other thing that's existing? And it would be very smart for someone to do that because no one's going to go through the shit, per se, to get to the gold, right? Like, most people, as soon as they get in the sewer system, they're out. They can't stand the smell, they can't stand the rats, they can't stand the shit, and all the other environmental things that happen in the sewer. So, but imagine though, under the sewer, there's this whole world, right? And we'll never know because you would have to get through the shit to get to the gold. So, that was my thought. I had that random thought one day. I don't know why. I think I was trying to even research sewers because I was curious to how deep does a sewer even go, right? But I was thinking about that. I think that might be true more that I hear stuff about this. So just wanted to bring that up.
Kind of common knowledge at this point. The secret would be how many of these deep underground military bases exist, where are they located, and what's happening inside of them. But I'm absolutely persuaded that they do in fact exist.
Interesting. We just, I can't even remember what we were talking about. Well, we were right before the interview started. We were talking about all the disclosure stuff, and you were having a meeting with the gentleman in Missouri, the congressman. Sorry,
Yeah.
his name escapes me.
Congressman Eric Burleson.
And I had mentioned you should check with Tim Burchett.
Yeah,
my friend.
I did briefly in the Capitol building.
Yeah, he's really into all
Yeah.
this stuff.
Great guys, by the way. Congressman Eric Burleson, and Congressman Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna. These are phenomenal congressmen and women. And they are at the heart of the battle for disclosure in Washington, D.C.
Nothing's coming out. Nothing's coming out.
Well, it is kind of, they're frustrated.
We got guys coming up there saying they found non-human biologics. I don't even know what the hell that means, but
We've had 2 hearings in Congress. The first hearing, of course, featured primarily the testimony of David Grush, who was in the intelligence community, and of course Grush, in an official capacity, investigating the topic of UAP. He came up against a program that he was not allowed to be read into, and this program is what's called today the Legacy Program. It's the program of the recovery and reverse engineering of non-human crashed UFOs, basically, and the non-human, quote unquote, biologicals associated with them. That was a term that Grush used during his testimony during the hearing. So we've had 2 hearings. The second hearing featured primarily the testimony of Lou Elizondo. And Elizondo and Grush are basically telling the same story. We have had this legacy program in place for decades. We've been recovering crashed non-human, let's call them non-human advanced aerospace vehicles. We've been recovering this and the biological creatures, dead or alive, associated with them. And this is an earth-shattering revelation for a lot of people. It's very difficult for a lot of people to assimilate that information into their brains, and because it's the biggest story in the history of mankind, right?
what do you think of all this?
Absolutely true.
You think it's all true?
100%.
Okay.
I'm because I'm somewhat of a ufologist, so I've studied ufology, and there's a lot of anecdotal data that has been accrued over the decades by competent ufologists that if you were to take the time to familiarize yourself with, I think you would, that everyone would draw the conclusion that, yeah, this is likely happening. Based on the data that's been accrued over decades of good UFO research. Yes, anecdotal, but at some point, a tsunami of anecdotal evidence becomes hardcore evidence, in my opinion. And then you have Grush coming out, you have Elizondo coming out, and they are basically affirming what ufologists have known for decades.
So you don't think this could be worldly tech?
We do have, we've had some success in reverse engineering some of this technology. I do believe that. We've had limited success. So do we have hybridized craft of our own that incorporate both non-conventional, exotic, and conventional components? I think the answer is yes. I think we do. Now, how advanced are we at this point with that technology? I don't know, but I am very persuaded that we have it. So some of what people see that they see these craft, these advanced aerospace vehicles, and they think that's a UFO, when in reality, I think much of it is us at this point. Not all of it, but much of it, I would concur, much of it is us at this point. But I believe that the technology originates with the exotic technology, with the non-human intelligence.
You know, a lot of people think that they come from under the earth, like there's some type of alien race beneath the surface of the earth. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's part of the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, which posits that there are non-human entities, intelligent non-human entities, who are surreptitiously inhabiting planet Earth with us. That these contemporaneously with us. In other words, some people, and this is just a hypothesis, but some people talk about maybe there was a sort of some kind of an extraterrestrial species that landed here a long time ago, and they've taken up residence inside of the Earth, and they have bases now in the Earth, and that a lot of the UFOs are actually not basically terrestrial based at this point. There are other hypotheses that describe a lost civilization, an antediluvian civilization, survivors of the cataclysm that we were talking about previously, that went underground, and they've developed their civilization underground, and they've been living contemporaneously with us here on planet Earth in a crypto-terrestrial manner. And I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. I think it is possible. But certainly a lot of the UFOs are coming out of the oceans, and they appear to be coming out of underground bases and definitely out of the oceans. A lot of the sightings, especially the ones that have been acknowledged by the government, have to do with large bodies of water. You know, the Navy encounters UFOs all the time.
Yep.
And a lot of the times they're either coming out of or going into the water. They call these the transmedium vehicles, because they can move through the atmosphere with the same ease as through the water. In fact, in a lot of cases, there's no splash. Now, how do you have a craft coming out of the ocean or going into the ocean at high rates of speed without generating an enormous splash? That's why they refer to these as transmedium vehicles. They seem to be able to move through any environment in the same way. And it's probably because of the technology. Maybe they're in their own gravitational field. They're generating like a gravitational bubble. So they're really moving space-time around the craft rather than moving the craft through space-time. That's one.
What do you think? Are they coming from space and under? I mean, I don't know. I don't know, man. I think I've interviewed a lot of people about this stuff. I've come to the conclusion I think it's all spiritual.
I'm entirely persuaded that that there's an extraterrestrial component to this.
Exactly. That's the point I want to leave at. I mean, I gotta entertain and go to bed, bro. I'm fucking tired as fuck. So, look, I like this interview. I definitely want to continue this one tomorrow. This is pretty good. He's going into a lot of topics that I think we can have good conversations about. My next stream, you guys better be talking, because I'm curious to what you guys' opinions are. 52 of you did sit here and watch it with me, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, like this is interesting stuff. You know, we're gonna dive deeper into this topic. I'm gonna try to find more information on this. You know, we did stream for an hour, a little longer than I wanted to today, but I will be back for a longer stream. We'll knock out this whole podcast tomorrow. It is 3 hours long. We're about 57 minutes in, so we're gonna do 2 hours tomorrow to make sure that we at least get this whole thing done. From there, you know, it should be Wednesday, so we'll go into some stuff as well for Harmony and Self-OS again. You know, I gotta do it every day to get you guys going, get you guys signed up. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow, probably around the same time. Let's say around 7 o'clock.